Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our event and happy International Day of Persons with Disabilities. My name is Jake Lewis. I'm a second-year student in the Kingstec Disabilities Supports and Services program and will be your online MC for our presentation. I'd like to start by acknowledging that Nova Scotia Community College is located in Mi'kma'ki, the unceded territory and traditional homeland of the Mi'kmaq Nation. Our relationship is based on a series of peace and friendship treaties between the Mi'kmaq Nation and the Crown, dating back to 1725. As treaty beneficiaries, we recognize that we are all treaty people. NSCC recognizes African Nova Scotians as a distinct group who arrived here 400 years ago, and from that time on, they have contributed to the infrastructure and economic wealth of the towns and cities they helped to build, but from which they could not benefit. We honor and offer gratitude to the ancestors of African descent who came before to this land. And with the International Day of Persons with Disabilities right around the corner on December 3rd, we would like to acknowledge that persons within our province who experience a disability, the oppression and discrimination they have faced, and the great contribution they make to our province. Moving on, I'd now like to introduce our two keynote speakers, Victoria Levack and Claire McNeil. Victoria Levack is a 32-year-old Queen's Platinum Jubilee Medal winner and podcast host and human rights activist focusing on housing rights within the community. She's a passionate public speaker and a spokesperson for Disability Rights Coalition of Nova Scotia, who is always striving to do what's best for her community. Claire McNeil is a lawyer who has worked alongside the Disability Rights Coalition during the complaints resulting in the 2023 human rights remedy that aims to change how Nova Scotians with disabilities live and work in the community for the better. All right, Vicky, Claire, I leave the virtual floor in your very capable hands.
Thank you, Jake.
Thanks, Jake.
Okay. So I guess we're starting with me to tell you a little bit about myself. I've been involved with the Human Rights Coalition or Disability Rights Coalition in Nova Scotia for, is it 5 years now, Claire?
Yeah.
Yes. So I got involved because I was institutionalized for 10 years. Claire called me and said, "You want to get out of there?" I said, "That's an option." And then got out, and I'm now living in the community, but it is still my responsibility to make sure everybody else gets out. And the remedy is the way we could do this. The remedy states that persons with disabilities will not have the right to choose where they live and will not be going to somewhere where there's just a bed, or we were treated just as bodies to fit in beds, and now it puts people first, it puts their goals, their lives first, and brings them the masters of their identity, which is what everybody else in Nova Scotia already enjoys. So in this way we can be full citizens.
All right.
Yeah.
So thanks again, Jake, for inviting us to speak today. The title of this keynote is The Road to Equality, and I think it's a pretty good description of where we're at. You know, we've been taken many years and the efforts of a great many people to get us to this point, and we're not there yet. We're still on the road. So we're going to, talk a little bit about how we got here. But I wanted to take a moment just to reflect on Vicky's story, because I think it kind of helps us understand how we make change. When Vicky was 20 years old, she effectively had no choice about where to live if she wanted to leave her parents' home. She needed social assistance and she needed supports and services, which essentially is she needed people to help her. But she wanted to live in the community, and she was told that her only option was a bed in a nursing home. So a nursing home, when we think about it, it is an institutional setting. It's a setting where people don't have choice over, the basic conditions of where they're living, when to get up, what to eat, who does it associate with. Yeah. So it is what we refer to as an institutional setting. Vicki, you spent what, more than 10
I
years?
spent a decade, a little over 10 years.
In a place where you didn't want to be.
No, I felt I had no choice. I knew it was morally wrong what they were doing by forcing me to be somewhere I didn't want to be. But the only other option seemed to be die. So I didn't want to do that, obviously. And
Although you considered it.
I did consider it. During the pandemic, when we weren't allowed out, even we were the last people, meaning people in nursing homes, were the last people out. I wasn't allowed out of my home without court's help for, I wouldn't have been outside for 18 months, which is longer than any other group.
So the COVID pandemic really brought home the nature of these institutional settings, but they do result in what we call segregation.
Yeah.
And, you know, segregation is a form of intentional exclusion. And when it's applied to a disadvantaged group, segregation amounts to discrimination. It's also been described as warehousing of people, where you treat
Yes.
people as objects or problems rather than full members of society.
These nursing homes were not built to live in. They were built for older people, so they were built for end-of-life care mostly. And I was 21, so I was nowhere in need of end-of-life care. Although, of course, that I struggled with the suicidal ideation because of where I was living. And during COVID, I actually told the staff that if we weren't let out soon, I was considering MAID because I couldn't live like this.
Yeah, it's the conditions were pretty brutal, but I mean, even apart from COVID, segregation based on race, we instantly recognize that as discriminatory. And in the US in 1990, they recognized segregation of persons with disabilities also as a form of discrimination. Yeah. And yet in Nova Scotia, we persisted in funding and maintaining institutions for persons with disabilities. They're still with us today. We have a systemic human rights remedy, but we haven't,
not enacted yet.
It's going to take some time to dismantle the discriminatory system. Yeah. And this occurred despite the fact that the government had numerous experts and people telling them over many years that the system was wrong and needed to be changed. And so, people often ask us, don't they, Vicki, why? Why did this happen? And the short answer is that decades ago, the Nova Scotia government decided to freeze community-based services for people with disabilities. And so that's a short answer. But then you have to ask yourself, why was the freeze directed at people with disabilities? And and why did it take decades and a massive human rights case for the government to recognize that the treatment of people with disabilities was wrong?
And I mean, the government has known that the treatment of people with disabilities, the Nova Scotia government knew back in 1998 that it was doing the wrong thing, thanks to the Kendrick report, which the GRC grew out of. So they've known since 2008 that they were doing something wrong, and they still didn't change it. So had they done what they needed to do in the first place, my generation and me specifically would not have it placed in nursing home. It caused me emotional and psychological damage that I will have to deal with for the rest of my life. So I'm still a little angry about that because they knew and they did it anyway.
Yeah, and one of the most discriminatory aspects about the system in Nova Scotia was the institutionalization of people with disabilities. In Vicki's case, I think you were sent to the nursing home because you were told that your needs were too complex, whether they were medical or otherwise.
I was called too disabled.
Too disabled.
Too disabled.
And yet we can see now that was completely false. Vicki's been living in the community, supported in the community with people to help her out for now over a year.
Yeah,
it's going well. So requiring people with disabilities to live in institutions isn't based on need. So we have to ask ourselves why it happened, and it happened because our systems are designed around the needs of able-bodied people.
Right. It started with oh well, we'll just put these people over here because back in the day that's what we did to people with disabilities. And they're like, well, it's easy to keep doing what we're doing, and it's hard to change the way we do things. So let's just keep doing what we're doing, because even though it's not great, it's easier than trying to dismantle a whole system.
Yeah, well, able-bodied people designed a system around the needs of able-bodied people is what it boils down to, and those able-bodied people considered their needs to be the norm. And if your needs were different than the norm, then they were something special. Sometimes they call them special, unreasonable.
I don't like that.
Unreasonable, you know, more than what the system was designed to meet. And so to the extent that people were supported, people with disabilities were supported in community, it was seen as kind of an act of charity by government and not as a human right.
And I was told by people, both in the nursing home and without, you should be grateful because you're housed, and many people aren't housed, so, which we all know. And so therefore, because I was housed, what do I have to complain about? I'm housed, I'm fed, my life is pretty great. So yeah, my body was taken care of, and I was like nourished, although I use the word very loosely because the food in those places is not healthy at all, despite having dietitians. And so I had everything I needed, so what did I have to complain about? So they nourished my body, kept my body alive, but my brain and my emotional well-being, they didn't have time to care for that. And it's not that they didn't want to, it's that the system is not designed for that. So my self-worth and my emotional well-being was neglected and harmed due to the system.
Yeah, there's no question that the research shows that institutionalization does cause great psychological harm and often physical harm as well. So it's kind of a false narrative to say that it's in people's best interest to be there.
It's
yeah, and you know, the honest truth is able-bodied people are entirely comfortable with there being institutions for persons with disabilities as long as they themselves don't have to go live there. Because if you ask any able-bodied person if that's where they would like to spend the rest of their lives, they're probably going to say no.
I mean, and there's a reason we use put you in a home as a threat, sort of a threatening joke to our elders.
Yeah. I mean, it's sometimes referred to, this kind of thinking is sometimes referred to as ableism. And it really does, when we go back to the question of why, how did this happen, it does lie at the root of systems that discriminate against people with disabilities. And institutionalization is just one of the many policies and practices that affect people with disabilities in that kind of discriminatory social system. It was put into place, the rules and the policies and practices were put into place without regard for people with disabilities' true needs. It perpetuates the attitude that people with disabilities are less worthy or less deserving of a place in the community, and ableism ignores the basic desire that we all share to have a meaningful life.
I mean, they say I have, quote, complex needs or special needs. Again, I'm not special, I'm just a person. And my needs that are not special are not complex. I require a lot of physical care, yes, but at the end of the day, my needs are the same. I need to be washed, dressed, and all that good stuff, but I also need to be around people who care about me and who I care about. I need meaningful employment in the community to feel worthwhile, whether that be volunteering like I do with the DRC or working with the CBC, which I do for money. Both things are very important. And,
yeah, you turned a corner yourself, but
I did. I need to be involved because we as humans, and disabled people are in fact humans. You know, we are social beings, we are collective beings, so we need each other, we need support. No one, they use the word independently or independent living or whatever, but independent, I think nobody's truly independent. We all rely on each other just for different things and in different ways.
Very true. So just turning the page a bit, in Nova Scotia, we've turned a corner ourselves with a Court of Appeal decision, a pretty important one in 2021 that found that the province was, its treatment of people with, towards people with disabilities was discriminatory. That was a huge breakthrough for people with disabilities in this province.
Yeah.
Vicki was part of that. The Disability Rights Coalition brought the appeal,
Yeah.
and the Court of Appeal found it in our favor.
When we, yeah, they didn't at first, but they did the second time. So it took them a while, but they did eventually get it right.
Yeah. And the court did find, like, among the policies and practices of the government that were discriminatory, that included institutionalization and the failure to support people with disabilities to live in the community in a way that was in accordance with their actual needs.
So now the way it's gonna work is they're gonna sit you down with somebody they're calling a local area coordinator, and they're gonna sit down with the person and be like, okay, what do you want for your life? And many people with disabilities were never asked that. So that's a breakthrough within itself. And they're gonna say, what's your plan for your life? And if you don't know, because like I said, most people have never even asked that, so they never even thought about it. And neither did their families, because their families basically learned to take what you can get, because it was very hard to receive services. They're gonna build a plan, and then the local area coordinator is gonna be like, okay, so here's where we can get you the help you need. And it's like, oh, we don't offer it in that area. Like, it used to be, we don't offer services in that county that you happen to live in, so you have to move to another county to get those services. Now the services will come to you. If they don't have them, well, they better get them real quick.
Yeah, so that's exactly it. Like Vicki's describing what kind of changes will be needed to the system here in Nova Scotia. And we've got, as of 2023, as of June of this year, we have a human rights remedy that's been ordered that is designed to see the end to the discriminatory treatment that the Court of Appeal identified. And it's supposed to take place over the next 5 years.
Yes. So I was going to run for politics, but apparently I'm busy for the next 5 years.
It's going to require a complete overhaul of the social assistance system for persons with disabilities who need supports and services to live in the community. And a really important part of this order is that the government's actions in making the changes that we've identified, the changes that are necessary, are going to be followed. They're going to be tracked, or monitored is another word, yes. So that we can make sure that things unfold as they should. Because here in Nova Scotia, people with disabilities have been subjected to many, many decades of broken promises. So the idea here is that the government's fully come to the table and agreed that this is what needs to happen and how it should happen, and that they're going to provide us with information along the way so that we can evaluate whether it is happening in accordance with the order.
And if it doesn't, there are mechanisms in place to hold them accountable.
So the DRC's, the Disability Rights Coalition's human rights claim won't be resolved, it won't be finished or over until the discrimination is ended.
Which is supposed to be in 2028.
Yeah.
But, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
So no one knows the future, things come up.
So we have a slide to show you, just to give you a sense of, we call it the road to equality. Well, it's been a long road for the Kendrick. It started with the Kendrick report.
And then out of the Kendrick report, because of those recommendations, the DRC was formed. It was first called the Kendrick Coalition, and then it expanded into the DRC, which it currently is. And we've been pretty busy since 2014, even before I got involved. We started the Human Rights Commission in 2014. And we've been pretty busy doing that for the last 9 years. And like I said before I got involved, and I'd like to take this moment to remember that's okay that Joe Livingston were no longer with us, but they were two of the complainants on the human rights case. So without them coming forward to be the face of this human rights case, we would never have gotten this victory. So we owe them a great debt. Also, Joseph Delaney, who is still with us and living very well in the community. Without these three individuals, we spent time in psychiatric wards, even though they were fit to medically cleared to return to community. There was nowhere to put them, or nowhere for them to live to receive support. So they were forced to stay on the lock ward, which of course caused great emotional and physical harm.
Yeah, and they were one of many.
Yes.
One of hundreds of people with disabilities.
Yes, but if they hadn't come forward and been sort of the voices, or not the names on the complaint, because in order to bring a complaint, you need people to come forward. So we owe them a great debt, and so to other hundreds of other disabled Nova Scotians, including myself.
So we're definitely on the road. If you'd like more information about the case, we've got some resources for you where you can go.
Yes, and the DRC's website is there. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. I refuse to call it X because that's a stupid name. And my email is there as well. If you'd like to get in touch with me personally, and I believe my Twitter is there as well. If it's not, it's at Victoria Levack. Pretty simple. So, and I'm a workaholic, so feel free to ask me a question any time of the day or night. I sleep with my iPad for a reason, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Yeah, so thank you again, Jake, for inviting us to speak today.
Yeah.
And I hope that anyone who's interested in learning more will go check out the website and our Facebook, and get in touch if you're interested in becoming more involved.
Yeah, and if you want to be a member, we are in the active recruitment stage, and that is my area. I've taken that on, so email me and I'll hook you up.
That was excellent. really and truly. On behalf of myself, my program, and NSCC as a general whole, I thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge and experiences with us, Vicki and Claire, and thank you as well for the work you and the rest of the Disability Rights Coalition have done and will continue to do to people with disabilities in our province. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jake.